takes a deep dive into players around the NFL in need of a primetime performance this week. Chris Broussard, take us through it. Who is under the most duress heading into week 3?
Jenna, I know Nick is on the edge of his seat wondering if his man Pat Mahomes made the list. We'll see. We'll see. All right. But he's not number 5. Number 5 would be Ezekiel Elliott. Look, the bottom line, Ezekiel's been outplayed by his backup, Tony Pollard, in the first 2 games. And it's starting to become a story nationally. It's not a narrative yet, but it's a story. If he goes out against Philadelphia, and it's the same old thing. Now, Philly's been good against the pass the first 2 weeks, so Dallas may need to rely on the run like they did last week. If Pollard outperforms Zeke again, this national story will become blown up, become a narrative. And while Zeke still could remain professional and team first, it could cause problems. Players are being asked, should Pollard be the starter? What's wrong with Zeke? Is Pollard getting enough touches? It just could potentially become a problem in Dallas. Zeke can change it all by going out there and turning back the clock and looking like the Zeke of old. All right, at number 4, following Zeke, we got Baker Mayfield. Now, you might say, hold on, Baker's been good. He's been solid. He's been okay. All right, he leads the league in completion percentage at almost 82%, so that's good. But he's got 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. That's not great for a game manager, albeit a spunky one, but he's a game manager, and you got to be better than 1 touchdown, 2 picks. All right, and they are going to need him to throw the football this week. Chicago, we know, pretty good against the run. All right, but he's without Jarvis Landry, his top receiver. OBJ might be back. He practiced fully yesterday, so if he comes back, how does Baker manage that? Remember, last year, he was better without OBJ because he seemingly didn't feel the pressure to get the celebrity receiver the ball. So I'm watching Baker. Remember, this is a guy that wants a deal making about $40 million a year. So if he plays poorly, this could be the difference between a lucrative contract, $40 million plus a year, or the franchise tag. All right, at number 3, we got Dave Gettleman. We go up to the front office, the GM, the embattled GM of the New York Giants. Look, it's his 4th year. They're 15-35 under Gettleman. They're not going anywhere. They at best, they are standing still. All right, but they might actually be going the wrong way. Nick, you think they're the worst team in football. Some questionable moves by Gettleman. First of all, drafting Saquon Barkley number 2. Now, this is not a slight on Saquon, who's been hurt for half of his tenure. It's a slight on running backs. And I love running backs, but in today's game, you don't draft a running back number 2, especially when Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were on the board at QB. All right, that's not to mention hiring Joe Judge. I'm a fan of Joe Judge. I love the old school approach. But at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. All right, and Joe Judge was a 38-year-old special teams coach. You passed over experienced coordinators on both sides of the ball to go with a special teams coach. If he doesn't win, it doesn't look good. And that's not to mention Danny Dimes, who's been more like Danny Drops with all the fumbles and the like. Gettleman could be in trouble. All right, number 2. My man, Jameis Winston. Now, there's a narrative going around on this show that I picked him to be the MVP. Stop it. All right, a dark horse MVP. We're forced into a bold prediction, something you know's not going to happen, but you got to throw it out there. That's what I did. I played by the rules. You guys went safe. But I do like Jameis, though. I still like him. I think he's closer to the 5-touchdown Jameis in week 1. So he looked bad in week 2. All right, no doubt about it. 2 interceptions. He's got to come out there and play well, or the narrative. That narrative can always get you. You know, you want to keep that thing positive. Yeah. The narrative will go negative if he has another bad game this week. And Taysom Hill's always just a moment away from getting that starting job or playing more possessions than Jameis. All right, at number 1, the guy under the most duress.
Who is it?
I don't think I'll get any pushback on this one. Mike Zimmer, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And let me say this. Zimmer's a good coach. 64-49-1 in his 7+ seasons in Minnesota. But here's the problem. That's a long time to be in a place when you have had very limited postseason success. All right, and he has had very limited. The 6 coaches in the league who have a longer tenure in one place than Zimmer, look at them. They all won Super Bowls, and they're lapping and triple lapping and double, all that more than Zimmer as far as playoff victories. So Zimmer, they're 0-2. We know how tough it is to make the playoffs at 0-2. If they lose this week, and they play Seattle, so a loss could be, is likely. 0-3, it looks like they'll be out of the postseason, and Zimmer will likely be out of a job. Those are the guys who are under duress. Nick, your guy survived.
Good list.
He was close, though.
Yeah, well, listen,
list.
I got to tell you, I was a little anxious that you were going to ruin, just obliterate all of your great work with 5 through 2 by erroneously and ridiculously and really kind of, what's the word, vulgarly putting Mahomes at 1. But you stayed true to your integrity and honesty, and you put Zimmer at 1. And so I think this is a great list. I'm going to not petition, because that's Wilds' stupid birds thing. I'm going to advocate for an addition. Sorry, Wilds, stray. And it's going to be hard. We're going to try to squeeze him in there. And this guy's not really a middle seat type of man. But I think you got to find room, hard to find the room, for Big Ben. And here's why. Quietly, Big Ben has been terrible. And it's not just this year. In 2019, he popped his elbow. In 2020, he fell apart at the end of the year. And this year, he has been quarterbacking a team that has scored 40 points on the year, 12 of those via field goal, and 1 via special teams touchdown. Last year looked good, then fell apart. That trend is continuing this year. When you look at his rankings across all major passing categories, it's like, oh, wait, that's all terrible. He's 25th in yards per pass, 25th in rating. He's thrown 2 touchdown passes. And if you're Pittsburgh, nobody can argue the Steelers don't have a great head coach. Tomlin's extraordinary. No one can argue the Steelers don't have a great defense. I think Cam Hayward's playing as well as almost anyone in football. Minka Fitzpatrick's great. I know they've dealt with a couple injuries, but they have a great defense. The problem is Big Ben cannot push the ball down the field. He's 39 years old. Yep. He's been on this trajectory for a while now. We just haven't really acknowledged it. So I think there is pressure on Big Ben to show he has something left. Or else, I mean, there's already minor, quiet, I don't even want to call it buzz. It's just kind of, you know, a murmuring in the background. Should the Steelers call Cam Newton? So I do think there is some pressure, or I think Ben is under a lot of duress already 2 weeks into the year, Broussard, given how last year ended particularly.
You're right, Nick, in that he hadn't played well. But they are 1-1. And here, I think the bigger problem, you mentioned Ben not being able to put your ball down the field, I think it's that offensive line. We know he's not a mobile quarterback. He's a statue. And he's got no protection, nor does he have a run game. It's looking a lot like last year toward the end when they lost their run game. So I think those are built-in, I'll go explanations rather than excuses. I agree he's got to pick it up. Cam Newton's a good name because you're certainly not going to Mason Rudolph. And we haven't even heard a peep about Dwayne Haskins. So I think those things keep the duress level a bit low, that there's no viable replacement other than Cam Newton who's out there. So that's why he didn't make the list. But I'm with you. He struggled.
All right, Broussard, I'm going to also add one person. And first I want to say about Jameis Winston. Going into Foxborough, look for the Patriots, who feasted on Zach Wilson at 4.